Well, welcome to the round table. I am Jennifer Eller, and with me is my co-host Mike Hill and our producer Nick Wilson, way there in the back. And then our guest today is Don Shone, who is the program director at the Place of Grace Men's Recovery Home.
Very
Did I get that right?
Very good.
Good job, Jennifer. You did it.
Very good.
That's a good memory.
There you go. Well, I don't know about that. I got to work on it now that 51's approaching and don't remember.
Hey,
things
do you take memory pills?
No, but I sure need to. Let me tell you, because it's getting bad.
Well, so I don't remember. I lose track of where I'm at during the week, but somewhere in a meeting I had this week, there was this guy who's like, he started taking creatine and some other memory pill together in some drink he does in the morning, and he's like, so much
He's
different.
focused,
My
huh?
focus. Like he says, my focus is better. I remember
They say
things
that
better.
mushroom coffee
That's what
is the
somebody
new
else said.
trend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the functional mushrooms. Do
Yeah.
you do it?
I actually just finished my first jar.
Okay, so who'd you get yours from?
It was called Beyond Brew. And
Okay.
it came highly recommended. Did I notice a big difference? Not really, because I think a lot of times those supplements take like 30, 40 days to
Okay.
really get into your system.
Okay.
So now I'm starting a second jar. I'll let you know in
Okay.
another 30
Yeah,
days.
because the guys that a couple podcasts I listen to, I mean, they are.
They're sold on it, aren't they?
Oh, I mean, they talk about it every single
Yeah,
week. They're like
yeah.
functional mushrooms for your mental health,
Yeah.
and again, they've been talking a lot because they're military guys, so they talk a lot about the whole mental health aspect and how
Yeah.
that's declining so much, and so like these functional mushrooms, and you put them in your. You don't put them in your coffee. I don't know how.
I
it
mix
works.
mine in coffee.
Okay,
That's all
I don't
do,
remember
but-
what they say.
Yeah,
but
you could mix a protein shake. I
yeah,
think,
anything,
whatever.
but
yeah.
that's the thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, well,
what brew?
It's called Beyond Brew.
Beyond Brew.
It has, 5-star ratings. I looked at all the reviews. It's got all the right ingredients. Something about you have to have certain kind of mushrooms that are fruit-borne. Or
Yeah.
it's.
Well, when they first started talking about it, I mean, I probably shouldn't admit this, but I was thinking back to my high school days of like the psychedelics.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
When you're
I'm right with you,
doing mushrooms, I'm like, you can really buy those now?
Yeah,
Like back then, you had to go find the dealer to get
Well,
the...
it kind of sounds like you still have to go find the dealer.
No, I mean, these are
Yeah.
like sold on internet now.
No,
Yeah.
I know.
Oh, but I was like, really, man, it's out there. You can buy the psychedelics.
Yeah, I am.
Anyway.
And I don't like mushrooms.
Yeah.
So this was a step for me.
What do they taste bad?
No, they actually don't. Not at all. They don't taste like mushrooms. I'll tell you
Okay.
that much. Actually, it's got a little coca in it, so
Yeah.
it tastes kind of like chocolate.
Oh, wow.
So it's not too bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do it then. I've been waiting because I've never met anybody who did it.
Yeah.
And then again, I'm like, is somebody scamming me, or am I going to
No.
take this stuff and be
No.
singing Kumbaya around a fire?
I think it actually works.
Okay.
I really do.
Got
But I'll know the next 30 days or
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, keep me posted.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
Yeah, so we're going to get to know you just a little bit
Okay.
before we jump into your story. So,
Okay.
do you binge watch any Netflix, any movies?
I'm not a TV guy. I watch sports.
Okay.
Baseball.
Who do you like?
Depends what
Okay,
sport we're
football.
in. Football's I'm a Chicago Bears fan.
Yes! Oh,
Yeah.
yay.
Baseball, I'm a Chicago White Sox fan.
Oh, wow. Boo.
I was born and raised on the southeast side
know.
of Chicago.
You were born and raised up there?
In Chicago,
Really?
southeast side. Yeah.
You kind of got that Chicago look.
I was told when I got here that I still had the strong Chicago accent.
Yeah, and you kind of look like a hitman.
I thought that too, actually.
You know what I mean? Like the guy that you'd meet him in the alley and you just pop him. Like
No,
on
I
a
think
show.
I know some stuff about him, so just
Oh, sorry. I don't know anything. I'm just like,
That's okay.
He's kind of got that,
I'm thinking to
that
myself-
Italian Chicago.
Yeah.
Hey, don't mess with me type
Yeah.
of. Oops.
That's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. I
no,
tell
that's
you.
funny that you think that. Because
Right,
that's,
right. So yeah, born and raised in Chicago. My parents are immigrants.
Okay.
My dad came from Italy with his family when he was young. My mom did the same from Poland.
Wow.
So I speak a little bit of 2 different languages, but just enough to be dangerous.
Really?
So
Have you
Speak a
ever went
little
back
for us.
over?
I'm sorry.
Have you went back over?
I have. I
you
have been.
really?
I've not been to Poland, but I've been to Italy.
Wow.
So we're from Calabria, and so
Okay.
we're Calabrese, and so I have met distant cousins when I went back, And so
Which concentration camp is in Poland? Is it
Auschwitz.
Yeah, see,
Yeah,
I've wanted to
Auschwitz.
go just for that.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to visit a concentration camp. And
I have not done a lot of background research on my mom's side, but I have on my dad's. And the only reason why is, as you try and do life and figure out life, and you're in prison and you got lots of time on your hands, you start to think about a lot of different things.
right.
But anyway, my grandfather was a member of the Black Hand, which was the mob that preceded Al Capone. Al Capone kind of ran them out of town.
No way.
Yeah, they were ruthless. They were ruthless. And my dad followed kind of in his footsteps. So growing up was tough. You didn't shed tears. You fought for everything you got. And, there was no positive male role model. I see my grandfather do things that a little boy shouldn't see.
Really?
So it was kind of this mentality of this is how you survive. They were both well off, so I started to think, okay, this is how it's done.
Right.
And
This is how you do life.
Yeah. And my mom kind of took a back seat, and she was there, present, but not, if that makes sense. She spoke when she needed to speak.
So is knowing what Chicago's like now, was it worse then? Like, I mean, I hear these stories of how bad Chicago is now. Was it?
Here's the thing. I still go back to Chicago. I
Okay.
have lots of friends there.
Okay.
Are the gangs there? Yes. But, in the greater Chicago area, there's 12 million people, and all the suburbs and all of that. Are the gangs prevalent? Inner city, they are.
Okay.
Are the drugs there? Absolutely. Are there gang wars? Yes.
Okay.
There have always been those.
Right. That's what I meant. I just wondered, is there really a difference, or is it just more publicized now that people see
I
it?
think now the big thing is all the shootings. When we were growing up, and the things that I did, we were fighters.
Oh.
You got beat up with a baseball bat.
Oh.
But you didn't shoot anybody.
Like, you're like a movie thing.
I don't know about
Like, you're
that.
the brass knuckle bell bat guy. Like, seriously, I'm thinking about some of these movies I've watched. I'm like, yeah.
I don't know. As it progressed, it got worse because when I was 13 years old, I made a decision to join the Chicago Street Gang. So the next 16 years, till I was 29 years old, I led a double life. I worked for the city of Chicago, had a good job, but on the side, I was doing all the things that I shouldn't be doing. I first went to jail. I want to say it was right around 1988, where I was involved in a drive-by shooting, one of the very few. We got ripped off by another gang, and we went and took our revenge. So I spent about 10 months at Cook County Jail. Thought I had it all figured out. I know I'm not going to get caught again. Charges were later dropped, insufficient evidence, all that. But after 10 months at Cook County, I got out with a newfound attitude. And
Well, can I interrupt you for just one second? Because I'm going to be fascinated now. So is the real, like, what you watch on TV, the mafia, mob things, is that real? Like, does that stuff really happen?
here's what I can tell you. It's glamorized on TV.
Okay.
But my dad would disappear for 3-4 days at a time. If something big was going down, he'd send us kids and my mom on vacation for a couple weeks. So I don't know. I can't tell you what he was involved in.
I'm just like, I just wonder how much of that stuff was true and how much was glamorized. And
I don't know. To be honest with you, I know it wasn't good.
Yeah.
I seen him put some real beatings on some guys. My dad was feared in the neighborhood. All the other Italians in the neighborhood, boy, they respected him. Wow. And that was because of who he was.
Sure.
And
Is your dad still alive? Or
he is
gone?
not. He died. My mom and dad died when I was 19, 3 weeks apart. So I've been on my own since I've been 19 years old.
So how does somebody end up in a gang? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is it you get recruited?
In my case, if you weren't Italian, Serbian, or Croatian, sometimes Polish, you didn't live in our neighborhood. Chicago is segregated. It always has been, even to this day.
Really?
There's Polish neighborhoods, there's Chinese neighborhoods, there's Italian neighborhoods, still to this day.
Wow.
And so we had our clique together. And so we formed a band of guys. We staked out our territory, spray painting buildings. This is our territory. Don't come in here. And if you're, a minority, you really shouldn't come in here.
Really?
And so we took that very seriously. This is our corner. That's our corner. That's our corner. This is where we do our business. Stay out. And growing up, we didn't have much opposition.
You know what's kind of funny is, so we've probably done 150 podcasts.
We're getting close to 150, yeah.
And so most everybody's story, and maybe you are going to say this, but most everybody's story is like, well, I grew up in a church and I knew God, but I just never went. And
I wish.
How many people grew up, like
In
that?
Chicago, in a gang.
Yeah,
And part of the
and
mafia.
understanding the
Well, I wasn't part of the mafia.
No, I know
My
you
dad
about your
was.
family,
Right, but I
you
mean,
know
just that you even know it.
Yeah.
I guess that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Well,
Like
I-
that part of your story that you even know that world, not even the mafia world, the true, like, on the streets, what it means, what that looks like. I think it's great for our listeners to be able to see. I mean, this wasn't just like I grew up in a home and made some bad decisions,
Oh,
and-
shoot. Forgot about that.
No,
Sorry.
that's fine.
Let me silence that. Oops.
We're
you
real
can cut
here.
that
We're
out,
real.
right?
No, we don't cut it
it
out. We
doesn't
go.
make any difference.
All right.
My phone rings half the time. I left it in the locker this time, so it quits
I
ringing.
forgot all about that. I'm
Yeah, so
sorry.
you get in a gang. You're 13, and
And here's, so as I grew older, I've always been a deep thinker, and I've always been, as far as books go, very book smart. And so, I mean, I flowed through high school, no problems, graduated on honor roll, and was selling all the weed and everything I could in high school. Everybody knew. So I started thinking about all this, what made me make that decision when I was 13? Why did I make that choice? And I could tell you there was a few reasons. I look back and I say, family. It's a tight-knit group. We always looked out for each other, always. The lack of a positive male role model at my house. I didn't have any guidance. You know who guided me? Fellow gang members, my peers.
wow.
And so those are two big reasons. And then, it was all about hustling and making the money, and you know what I mean? And we wanted good lives, we wanted lots of money. And so that's what we did, I mean, I could tell you there are a lot of men who I know who didn't make it out of that neighborhood. And, that's tough. That's tough. You look back and you say to yourself, man, that could have been me. I remember we were in a gang fight in a bar, and I actually punched a guy with a beer bottle, and his girlfriend stabbed me in the chest with a broken beer bottle. And, blood was everywhere, it was coming out, and my first reaction was, I'm going to get my gun. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. And I went to the hospital, got stitched up, and the doctor says, she would have stabbed you a half-inch lower. She would have stabbed you right in the heart.
And maybe you're going to get to this, but I'm just curious. So where you are today and what you saw growing up, do you think most men that end up in incarceration have those same two problems? Like, not a positive male role model in their life? Because again, I always think through that. Like, that's something that's always running through my mind of how much does not having a male figure, not even just a dad, but a positive
Male
role model.
And the reason why I use that word is because there was a huge study done on men in prison. And out of that study came some pretty profound data. And one of those data points was, out of every 10 men in prison, 8 of them had no positive male role model in their lives.
8 out of 10?
80%. So, and then the other data point that I thought was right on is, out of every 10 men that are in prison, 9 are there in direct correlation to some type of addiction or drugs. Either they were on drugs and they committed a crime, they were dealing drugs, whatever. They were stealing because they needed to keep their habit going, whatever. Wow. But 9 out of every 10 men that are in prison, that's 90%.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
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 So I'm sorry I keep interrupting
That's
your story,
okay.
but I
No.
just these things keep going through my mind
Yeah.
when you said that. I just wonder, is that true of most people that they end up incarcerated because, again, missing men, missing positive male role models?
Absolutely. That is so critical.
Yeah.
Absolutely so critical. I think one of the things, too, I wasn't your average kind of hoodlum.
Okay.
But, I led kind of a double life because I knew what the authorities were looking for, and so I got a full-time job.
Yeah.
I worked for the city of Chicago.
Right.
I had a good job.
So what did you do for the city of Chicago?
I worked for the Chicago Park District. I was a union rigger. So
Wow.
I did all kinds of special events, all kinds of stuff. And then on the side, I was selling all the drugs and everything. All the money was being distributed where it wasn't tied to me. So my goal, I'll be honest with you, I've told my wife this, my goal was by the time I was 30 years old, I wanted to be a millionaire.
Yeah.
And I was well on my way.
Right.
Well on my way.
Right.
But in 1990, beginning of 1992 into 93, I was doing. I'll just. I'll say it this way. I was doing some dirt in Indiana.
Okay.
And I got caught, and they were watching me for a long time, and so I was charged with 26 Class C felonies.
26?
26. I think now they would call that a level 4. I think because level 5 is the highest, so I think they would say, or it's maybe a level 3, whatever. But yeah, it was a lot of charges, and they were looking to send me to prison for a long, long time. And that's when I started saying, I don't want to die in prison. I don't want to die in prison. What do I got to do? So I spent a small fortune on a lawyer. And I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I was trying to call guys, guys that I knew, guys in the gang, and everybody thought I was going to flip because of all the charges they had on me, just to get a lighter sentence. I wasn't raised that way. That thought never crossed my mind. They never even asked me to. But they wouldn't answer my calls. They wouldn't want nothing to do with me. Everybody just scattered, like when you turn the light on with roaches. They scattered. And so I was by myself. My parents were gone. I was married for a short time. My wife filed for divorce, took all the money that we had spread out everywhere, and I was by myself. As things progressed, came to a plea deal, a plea agreement, and I ended up doing sentenced to 10 to 5. So I ended up doing about 5.5 years. I went to prison real late 93, somewhere in there. I got out in 99.
Can you, again, you don't have to, but can you share any story of like crazy thing that you did as a,
gang member?
Yeah,
tell you-
I'm not trying to dramatize it,
No.
but I mean, just to give people a little bit of a feel for what, because again, I don't know that anybody could grasp the fact of like, you maybe made a bad decision or made a couple bad decisions.
Yeah.
Is there a story of like maybe when you were at your lowest?
I think, not only was I dealing drugs, but I was doing drugs. I was addicted to drugs. I was addicted to the money. I was addicted to the adrenaline rush that came from all of that. And there was one time, very few times that guns were involved. Other than the drive-by shooting, I was in another bar. It's amazing because when I was doing all the dirt, I would go into a bar. I would never, ever sit with my back to the door.
Really?
I would always face the door. Always want to see who was coming in. And you make lots of enemies. You beat up people. You fight with other gangs. And So anyway, we had gotten into a tiff with another gang. I'm not going to tell names
Sure,
of gangs because I don't. Yeah.
Right.
So we got and they came looking for us, And I was in the bar. A buddy happened to be walking out of the bar and seen them all getting out of the car. And so we knew what was coming. So we all tried to run out the back door. They started shooting. They stopped shooting. And I peeked around the corner of the door. And as I peeked, a guy shot, and the bullet landed right next to my head and blew me back through the door. That, what to me was, another instance where I believe, excuse me, where God was really saving my life.
You ever afraid?
I wasn't at the time. I think back and I say, what was
I'm
I thinking?
thinking of all of these things, and I'm like, I mean,
I don't think I ever sensed fear. My fear comes out as anger. And I've been in lots and lots of fights.
Right.
So that's how my fear comes to light, as I get angry.
Right.
And still, even to this day, now the anger is silence, because the physical side is obviously that's
Right.
been gone. But so I don't ever recall being afraid.
Wow.
Even when I got to prison for the first time, I knew they were going to test me. I knew that was coming. And as soon as the first guy tested me, what did I do? I hit him. I hit him because, you know what? It's okay. I'm not backing down.
Right.
So I spent, I don't know, my first 90 days or so in the hole for fighting. You just, that old Don, that hoodlum was really entrenched in me, you know. And even though I was a born-again believer, I remember getting to prison. I remember walking around the prison yard saying, Jesus, I know what I did, but I don't know you, and I'm going to need a lot of help to get through this.
So how old were you when you got
To prison?
Yeah.
I was I was 30 years old.
30 years old when you got incarcerated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I got arrested when I was 29.
Okay.
So up until that time, I only had one prior arrest, and that was for a drive-by shooting where charges were dropped. So
when you get in there, is there, because again, I don't know what how the typical jail stuff work is that people are in there preaching all the time? Because you said you kind of just like, hey, went to jail and got 5 years and found Jesus.
Yeah.
Is it like people in there
it's
preaching?
kind of funny, Mike, because I accepted Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, at the Lake County Jail while I was on trial.
Really?
Yeah. And so it's amazing. I still remember their names were Jesse and Marcia. She was a big, tall white woman, and he was a black guy of maybe 5 foot tall. I'm not kidding you. They would come every week faithfully, and they would preach the gospel faithfully. And finally, one week, they'd go around the cell, ask everybody. I'm like, hey, I need to get out of this cell. Yeah, I'll go sit over there in church service. And what they say in the scriptures that you're saved by grace through faith. It's not from yourself. It is a gift from God. And so that gift of saving faith was bestowed on me. And that's when I said, that's it.
Yeah.
The only problem, Romans 7 still wanted to surface, and Paul, the very things I don't want to do are the very things I do.
Yeah,
It's called flesh.
Right.
And so that was hard. I had 30 years of ingrained way of life.
Right.
And it wasn't good. Hardly any of it.
Had you heard the gospel before?
Never. Never
See,
heard the gospel.
That to me is just another reminder. Like we can be in mission fields overseas and preach to the unreached, but I think there's a lot of the unreached.
I can tell you a couple of things we did do, though. So there was a church that would send out busloads of people to the neighborhoods, and and they would go to all the gangs or wherever, and so they bless you. So they came one day, and we were in front of our hangout, and they came and they started preaching the gospel. But they started talking to us first. And
Okay.
I say they started preaching the gospel, even though I never heard it, because that's what they intended to do, but they didn't make it to it. And here's why. All of us tipped over their bus, and they fled. True story. True story.
Yeah.
True story, as God is my witness, we tipped over their bus.
Yeah. You came in to preach the gospel. You're going back out walking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True story to this day. So that's about the closest I ever came
Yeah.
to hearing the gospel.
Yeah. So once so again, you receive Christ before you actually go into prison.
Right.
Yeah. So how do you maintain your faith? Like, how does that work? Because obviously, I have no idea. There's not church. There's not Bible studies.
Well,
or
there is.
There is.
Prison, state prison, you're mandated by the federal government to have church services, freedom of religion. There's Wiccas, there's Islam, there is New Age, there is a multiple series of different religions because it's federal ordered. You have to have it.
Huh.
Yeah. So you have religious freedom in prison.
Okay.
So there was church service, there were Bible studies. And I remember walking around the prison yard saying, God, like I told you, I have no clue. I have no clue. You need to put somebody in my life.
Yeah.
And so there was a couple lifers that seen what happened initially when I got there. And they came up to me. When I say lifers, they had already did at least 25 years and said, hey, we want to talk to you. So I went over and I started talking to them. I told them, I said, I don't know what overcame. I don't know what happened. I just did what naturally I thought I needed to do. And so I shared with them that I accepted Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, but I had no clue what I'm doing. And I was like, well, you need to come with us. And so they took me under their wing. And they really mentored me. And they really helped me. And they established me in how important it was to read the Bible every day. And, I just discovered that God just gave me 5.5 years of not worrying about what I'm going to wear. I don't have to go to work, where I'm going to lay my head, where my next meal is coming from. He gave me 5.5 years to study His Word.
Right.
With no other worries.
Wow.
I don't know, that's...
Well, I mean, no other worries. I mean...
There might be a twisted way of looking at it. I'm talking about no other worldly worries.
Right, for sure.
I just love that those guys that were in prison that still were being used by God and stuff.
No.
It's just like, we know we're here, but we're still going to try to reach people for Jesus.
I agree.
I mean,
totally,
that is
100%.
just like
because if those guys wouldn't have came alongside, I don't know what would happen. I was baptized in prison. And just another story. So I do lots of prison work still. And so I had to go back to some training at Miami Correctional Facility. And a gentleman I haven't seen in over 30 years was sitting across the table from me, and it was the pastor who baptized me.
Wow. Did he remember you?
He did.
I'm sure. I mean,
He
you
did.
don't change them.
Yeah, and I went up to him and I said, you baptized me in 1994. And it was a little trough in prison. And I guess we were featured in DOC magazine and whatever, but just his faithfulness all those years coming, and it really spoke volumes to me. I've been working within the prison system since the day I got out.
So can you talk? I just want to make sure we get to the part of because I'm assuming, being the director that you are with the Men's Place of Grace, and again, I'm going to say this, I think this is right, but it's to help through the transition period of getting out of prison and getting into life.
Absolutely.
So can you talk a little bit about your struggle of, because again, it's something I don't know and I don't understand and I don't get. You do 5 years, you're on fire for Jesus, like you're learning everything, and then you get out. So you get your freedom, but from what I would understand you guys saying, that's not as easy as it sounds to just walk out and start life.
Yeah, I walked out of prison at almost 36 years old with $1,200 to my name. $1,200. I worked my whole life, and and a lot of it was due to my very poor choices, but I still had to get started.
Right.
And so I had a spiritual family that came alongside me, and they directed me, helping me make decisions. And
How'd you get a spiritual family?
while I was in prison, the two men that would come and mentor me that were ex-gang members that got saved, they knew a family that was missionaries in Bolivia who had a place for me to stay. Isn't it amazing how God works? And they prayed about it, and they said, I think God is telling us we need to give you a place to stay.
Right.
And so now they're my spiritual parents. He's 96, she's 89. Still go and see him in Chicago. So I had a small return to prison after I got out the first time. And it was due to, again, I started working this business and was ripped off by a contractor, and the old Don came out.
Sure.
I'm going to get mine.
Yeah.
I'm going to get mine. So I went back to prison for another year and a half. So when I got out the final time, I knew I couldn't go back to Chicago. I couldn't. I know too many people, too many things. And so I found a transitional home in South Bend, Indiana, because I was at South Bend Work Release at the time.
Okay.
And the gentleman, I was his very first resident. He was just starting the ministry. From there, he took me to a church that accepted me, mentored me. The pastor, still to this day, is one of my best friends and my mentor. That's 24 years ago, 23 years ago. It'll be 24. I just spoke at their men's breakfast not too long ago for a chance, probably 6 months ago, for a chance to thank them for what they did. They accepted me. They helped me. They mentored me. They came alongside me. They didn't hand me anything.
Right.
But they taught me God's word and the value of honesty, integrity, and doing the right things, no matter what.
Yeah.
And to me, that was the foundation of what God was calling me to do.
Yeah. So did that spark something in you? Because
did.
again, I'm just sitting here thinking like, when you've been through an experience, it changes your life. You
Yeah.
want to try to replicate that again in the lives of other people because
Yeah.
of that gift.
I
you know?
think what it did was just cemented what God was doing in my life in the direction He wanted me to go. He was taking those poor choices, those life experiences, that prison time, all of the junk, and He was making a diamond out of it. And so I really felt, I need to, this is where I need to be,
Yeah.
And so as I grew in my faith and the church coming alongside me, they sponsored me and gave me a scholarship to go to Moody Bible Institute and finish up what I started my first prison bit. Finished with my degree in biblical studies, and I became the director of that transitional program.
Wow.
So when I met my wife, we had 8 homes with 28 guys. We were helping transition out of prison, out of county jail, and doing things like that. And that's when I really felt called that, I wanted to get married. And so I think you know my wife, Heidi. Yeah.
Yeah, no, she used to pray with Sherry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she had 3 small children. I knew I couldn't work a full-time job, support a family, and to be director of the ministry. So I handed off the directorship to a gentleman who still has the program going today.
So this is up north.
This is in South Bend.
Wow.
Yeah. And Heidi and I got married. My job brought me here to Huntington 15 years
Because
ago.
I was going to ask you how you ended up here.
Yeah,
Okay,
so the
by
job.
your job. Yeah.
And so we raised our kids. They're amazing adults now. And it's Heidi and I. And I'm only working part-time, 4 days a week now. And I have lots of free time, and I feel like God is calling me.
Can you talk about what does it mean, or how do you feel for you personally then and maybe even now? What does it look like for the church, God's people, to come alongside people?
Oh, Mike, I can't tell you how important it is for us to have those role models, whether it be men or women, those godly role models to help us and direct us. Even if the men or women are unbelievers,
Right.
there is something about a person who is kind, who loves the Lord, who can come alongside these men and women and say, "We're here for you." You know, not enable, but we're here for you.
Right.
You know, and I think that's the real calling, a real burden I have on my heart is, you know, now I'm seeing our community and what's happening in our community, you know, with the fentanyl and all of the other drugs that are going on, the alcohol, and I really feel led to open a men's recovery home. And so that's when I approached the board of Place of Grace. I was one of the founding members of the board, and then I had stepped down when the women's program got up and running because there was no really role for me.
Right.
And here, Place of Grace, 9 years later, one recovery home, 2 graduate homes, and a women's home being built for women and children. You know, amazing
Right.
what they've done. And so what's the next step? The next step is the men's recovery home. And so I approached the board. I said, here's my vision. Here's my heart. Everybody knows me here. And they were like, let's pray about it. Well, I would say it probably took them about 2 days. And they got back to me and said, we're on board. We're on board. What does that look like to you? So backing up a little bit, about 6 years ago, I was asked to sit on the Community Corrections Board, Huntington County. And couldn't figure out why I was sitting on this corrections board because I had no input. I had no understanding of everything that they were doing. I did have previous experience because I was the only ex-offender to sit on St. Joe County's corrections board, but I helped them make a lot of policy there. Here they had pretty much everything, so I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I kept praying, Lord, I just need to get off this board.
Right.
And then about 2 years ago, they started talking about a work release facility. Started looking for a work release facility. Well, this past November, that came to be when the sisters at Victory Knoll gave them the county
Right.
half the facility. And so my role there now is I'm the volunteer coordinator and the chaplain. So we've got CR. They're going to be able to come to Life Church here in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that is just a part of the process of getting this men's recovery home up and running. Because I'll be honest with you, right now, there's probably 3 to 4 guys there that have nowhere to go when they get out. And there's probably another 3 guys that are going back to an extremely toxic environment.
Yeah, so why, again, I'm assuming this is just, I'm sure, a dumb question, but why a women's home first? Aren't there more men in jail?
Well, you know,
I would just assume there's more men.
You know, I never asked that question because I've just felt like, okay, God, if this is what you want me to do.
Yeah, for sure. I just wondered if there was a theory behind it. Like, what motivates, because I hear a lot of that. There are a decent amount of things for amount. But the places for men to go, it just seemed like there was less. I don't even know if that's true.
No, I think that is true. I think the numbers back up what you're saying, but I don't know. I don't know why. I wish I had an answer for you, but the women who were ministering to the women at the jail, they were passionate.
Yeah.
You know, and they were smart. Here's my I'm a get it done guy. I would go in there and say, okay, let's do it. Let's get it done. And the women say, wait a minute, we got to talk about this. We got to think about it. And it was good. It was good for me to see that, you know, because I'm like, I just bust through the wall. Let's keep going.
Right.
And the women were like, oh, lots of questions.
Right.
And so just to watch that happen, you know, and the executive director they have now is amazing. Brittany is amazing. She is super smart. She is well educated, and she has that program running very, very well.
Right.
And so I don't know why they started the women's program first, but I'm glad they did because now I can learn from all their
Sure.
mistakes.
Yeah.
I'm not reinventing the wheel here.
Yeah, right.
I don't want to be anything but working with the men.
And what are the biggest barriers to get something like that going?
Yeah,
is it finding a house? Is it being approved? Like I'm just trying to decide.
Well, I think I'll be honest with you. The biggest barrier is finding a house in the right location.
Oh, okay.
You know, you can't be too close to schools because sometimes the parents get upset about that. Oh, we got a recovery home that's right. So finding that, and obviously the big one is the finances behind it. So we are in a fundraising stage right now. We're hoping to have everything in place and have that house up and running by the summer. We were shooting for this spring, but until God opens up the door,
Right.
we're gonna wait.
Right.
If somebody has a house or they want to start to give, they could just send it a place of grace and write men's recovery home on it.
Okay.
We have a substantial, we've got a pretty good nest egg going right now.
Right.
But we still need quite a bit more. We're figuring just the first 2 months of up and running expenses of what the house might need is going to be around $30,000. And so,
But you have a house now,
we don't.
or you don't have a
No.
house. How's that even possible?
But
You know what I
what?
mean? Like all of the places that seem like they're for sale around Huntington. How realtors, you guys out there, give him a house. What is going on? Like
Well, we're trusting
Give up
this-
one of your rentals. Let's go. Come on.
And we're trusting God for it.
Yeah, no,
So how many bedrooms you want? How many bathrooms you want? Put out your wish list here. What do you want?
We'd like to start with right around 8 to 10 guys, but we can go up to 15. We've already got a team put in place. So it would have to be, I think code says you got to have one bathroom for every 3 guys. Brittany would know more about all of that. So that would be a blessing. If we could start with 15 guys, we can fill that house in no time.
Right.
And since we're licensed by the state, we're approved by Huntington Community Corrections, we would have men even sentenced right to our program from the
really?
county jail. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we have a team in place. We have a spiritual leader, Jim Hippensteel. We have Life Church. We have CR. Jeff Diamond's going to be running that. So we have the mentoring program that Taylor and I are working on.
Yeah.
I'll be teaching as I come on board with authentic manhood. Teaching. I'll be teaching that. And program director, we have one guy who has done 30 years in prison who already said, sign me up. He wants to be one of the part-time house guys to work with the guys.
Wow.
So, I mean, God is just bringing all the people together, all of them. And it's amazing.
So for somebody that's out there, so it's obvious, like if you want to donate or you should donate, like go onto the website.
Place of Grace website.
And just attach the men's part.
Yeah,
Right.
men's recovery home.
Right. So
that's all you have to do.
Are these homes, they're not self-sustainable, right? Like they're not, it's always going to be based upon funds giving, right? It's not like somebody pays something to be there.
No, so this is the part I'm still learning. Brittany's very good at explaining it, and she knows it very well. So the initial home is going to be a recovery home with a 4 to 6 month program, depending on what they're coming from. After that, they'll move to a secondary house where they'll spend another 4 to 6 months acclimating themselves, obviously working and doing all those things, but still being part of the program. And then they'll have an option to go to phase 3, which is graduate housing, where they'll be like each step is a little bit more independent,
Right.
A little bit more self-sustaining.
Yeah.
So the initial 4 months, there's some Recovery Works funds that are available to kind of help them and support them.
Right.
They won't work for the first 30 days as we acclimate them
Right.
to the program and what we're doing and all of that. But there'll be, not only spiritual training, CR, there'll be physical as well. I just talked to Rayanne today about
Yeah.
putting a program together because men need physical exercise.
Amen.
You
brother.
know, they do. They do. I have a lot of the program worked out. I'm still asking Brittany lots of questions
Sure.
because I want to learn from all of their mistakes and not try to repeat those mistakes.
Yeah, I just want to be Life Church has always tried to be how do we help remove barriers?
Yeah.
Like we don't have to be highly involved, but we can be people that can tear down walls. So through whatever we can do, that's what I'd like to say. Like if it's money, if it's a house, there's enough people that listen and watch this that we're just going to pray that God lays on people's
Somebody's
hearts.
heart, yeah.
Because it's obvious that this is a huge need and a huge calling on your life, and that we ought to be able to figure out how to remove some of those barriers and see some of those things happen.
You know, I've been trusting God for this, and you know, I had a chance to take another full-time job. I didn't even talk to my wife about it because the answer was no. I'm sticking with the 4 days a week because this is what God has called me to do.
Right.
I think I think really the biggest part for me is to help these men coming out of county jail, help these men coming out of prison, help these men that are sentenced to say that you're valuable. You are, excuse me, you are so valuable that God sent his son for you.
Yeah.
You know, you're important. You mean something. This past mistakes or your struggles doesn't dictate who you are. You know, God's got a plan for your life. The biggest struggle is, do you want to surrender to that plan?
Yeah.
You know, I know I've go back and forth with that. I do. I go back and forth with that because, believe it or not, 30 years as a believer, there are days where the old Don just sure surfaces. You know, and I battle that flesh. You know, and it's still a growing process because, you know, I spent 3 years working with the men on Indiana's death row. There were 12 guys there. I would go every month and spend 4 to 6 hours there with them. I learned a lot about depravity, about my own depravity. I learned a lot about insight of what that's like. I remember this. This is kind of a profound story when the guy told me. So there's a gentleman, he's a believer on death row. There's 2 of them there. Come for my usual visit. Hey, Don, sit down. I want to talk to you. Yeah, what's going on? I had 3 lawyers come to see me today. Or no, 2 lawyers and what do they call the interns?
Paralegals.
Paralegal.
Yeah.
I said, okay, tell me about it. Well, they wanted me to file this petition because the drugs that they use on death row are not safe. And so they want me to file this petition to stay off my execution. So, I said, what'd you say? He said, no, I don't want to do it. And there was a young lady there, a paralegal, kept looking at me. And I asked her, I said, do you have a question for me? She goes, yeah. He goes, go ahead, you can ask it. And she asked him, how do you deal with this place? I mean, it's 6 by 9s, and they're out of their cells for 1 hour a day. That's it. And they never leave the range, ever. They're handcuffed and shackled wherever they go. I mean, these men, you know, obviously they've done capital murders.
Yeah. Right.
He says, young lady, let me tell you something. And he pulled out a mirror and he showed it to her. He says, when I could learn to live with the man in that mirror, I can handle this place. And that was pretty profound to me because he was dealing with, you know, being a born-again believer, what he did. You know, he's dealing with it every day, every day. He can't make up for it, you know what I mean? There's nothing he can do other than rest in the unconditional forgiveness of God.
Right.
That's it, right?
Right.
And then I had another gentleman on death row. His IQ was very low, but he said, Don, he says, you know, they're trying to change the death penalty law. I said, really? He goes, yeah. I said, well, what do you think about that? He says, well, I think that if you capital murder somebody, you should die. And then I looked at him. I said, well, that's what you're here for. He goes, yeah, I know. He goes, I just don't want that to happen to me. But, lots of conversations like that.
Yeah.
You know?
So we're getting close to the end. So I
Okay.
got a couple things I would like.
Okay.
Unless you
No.
got
Nope.
a couple. So
Nope.
let's look beforehand. So let's talk about what can we do as men to help guys not get incarcerated? Like, what do we need to be doing in our community today can you give us some advice on, or give our listeners or people that are watching some advice as being a good male role model? What can we be doing to help keep that from happening?
Yeah.
Right?
I think one of the biggest things is that we have to engage our youth.
Okay.
I think engaging them, meeting them where they're at, is a big step in earning their trust.
Okay.
Because once you earn their trust, they'll confide in you. And you know what? It's kind of different because I raised two boys, and they didn't confide in me too much, but they confided in other adults where they felt comfortable because they said they always pretty much knew the answer I was going to give them. But it wasn't always the case. But
Right.
I think engaging our youth and meeting them where they're at
Okay.
and building relationships with them
Yeah.
is really important. And here's what I think. A lot of times it's not the parents who will do that. I don't know why it is, but it seems like sometimes the youth will gravitate to a certain person,
Yep.
and they want to engage, and so I think that's one, and I think a lot of times too is educating the parents on what their behavior looks like and what it portrays to the kids.
Yeah.
I think there are generations of families who don't know any different than the way they're living life right now.
All they've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is a bottle of whiskey in the cabinet and dad's drunk at 6 o'clock, That's
Right.
what they know.
Right.
Harsh words, being treated as almost a secondary citizen.
Yeah, and then they just repeat it.
Yeah, then
Yeah.
they just repeat it because
Yeah.
that's what they learned.
So then once somebody gets incarcerated, is there jail ministries that people can get involved? Like, I don't even know what that is. Is
So
there?
I'm still working on that.
Okay.
Jamie Karst over there at the jail, I believe she has some programs going. She has her hands full over there, from what I understand.
Okay.
I'm still trying to get in and talk with her and see what we can do to help.
Okay.
But I know she's kind of overwhelmed.
Yeah.
She's overwhelmed.
Okay. So that's still kind of up in the air.
Yeah, we're
Is
still
there
working on
places you
that.
can go outside of Huntington to do jail ministry?
Well, so I am I'm licensed over at Allen County Jail, but I also belong to a program called Kairos, which is
that's what's- yeah.
International Prison Ministry.
Okay.
So I've been with them for about 20 years,
Okay.
and I sit on the board with them. And so what we do, in fact, they're doing it right now at Miami Correctional Facility, is they're doing a 4-day weekend there, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Well, they'll go in and they'll help the men, 36 hand-picked men, work through some of the issues that got them there. Now, here's the struggle, and this is what led Pastor and Jim and I to really pursue a men's recovery home, is there are stipulations in their bylaws that say that when a gentleman gets out of prison, that he's not allowed to have contact with a Kairos member for a year or two.
What?
It doesn't make sense to me. It never has. In fact, I offered to go and train volunteers how to work with guys when they got out of prison, and they denied it. The state council did. But Jim and I were adamant that, okay, you go to this Kairos weekend. They have a very, very reliable follow-up. They go twice a week, I think. They do what they call prayer and share. And they get to know these guys, and they build relationships. And then they say, oh, you're a month away from getting out. I'm sorry, I can't help you. Yeah.
Wrong.
So Jim and I said, no, we're not doing
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
anymore.
no, for sure. Yeah.
And so that's really another area where we said we need to start this recovery home. I know lots of guys in Kairos. They do
Yeah.
a great
Right.
program, a great thing. So you know what? Just refer the guys over here.
Yeah.
I know how to deal with them.
Right.
I've
So
been there, done that.
Yeah, and so now we get, hey, people are transitioning out. And so you've talked a little bit about that. So can you give people ways to, do you want them to get in contact with you? Do you want them to go on a website? Like, what's the best way to be a part of helping you get what you need done?
Yeah, here's what I would say. I think if the finances are a part of it, then just go to the Place of Grace website. If they want to talk to me about other ways to help,
Okay.
I'll give you my number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think Nick can put out there, after we're done, a connection.
Yeah,
to
so I write like a little blurb for them to put on like, social media and stuff like that.
And the thing
so,
about
yeah.
it is, too, is, they can give clothes. The men need clothes when they get out of prison. They can give food. They need food for the house, they winter coats, shoes. Big thing that Jim and I talked about, Taylor and I talked about, is I know here at Life Church we have people who could train them in skills.
Right.
Whether it be auto mechanics, carpentry, whatever.
Right.
Give them a skill, give them a trade. So those are all things that would absolutely be wonderful to have.
Yeah, good.
If you can't give money and you say, hey, but you know what, I'm a darn good mechanic.
Right.
Bring one of them guys over here. Let me show them how to work on cars.
Right. Right.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. They
Good.
need that. So there's a lot of different ways to help.
Yeah. So you'll go ahead and get that out on so that you can
Yep.
get a hold of them.
Yep.
So
Good.
Yep.
All right.
did I took the whole thing away. I'm sorry. Did you have questions?
I
would-
have no question. Well,
Okay.
I could probably ask him a bunch of questions, but no, I'm
Okay.
good. No,
Are you
I'm
sure?
good. I am totally good. But
Okay.
yeah, it would be interesting just to pick your brain more on
Yeah, maybe we
different
just
things,
need to
so
have him back again.
Maybe.
You know,
Yeah.
about
maybe
I
we'll
would
do
love
a
that.
follow up once we get the home or something.
Yeah,
but,
I would love that. I think, as much as I would love to go back to Chicago, that's my home and always be my home. I think God has brought me here. Helped me get established. Helped me to raise the kids in a really, I think, a safe environment.
Yeah.
And now they're all adults, and so I guess he's kind of slowly revealing his plan.
Yeah. You're on the second half. What God wants you to do.
I think so.
Yeah. That's
think
that's
so.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Again, so we'll be praying for you. We're super
appreciate
excited that we get to be a part of. When I got that email today that said that the work release guys, and am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know I wondered too, but he
yeah.
already said it. He already
Yeah,
said
yeah.
it, so
Oh,
you're
you did
good.
already say
Yeah.
it? Okay.
you're
Yeah. that
we
they
just
get-
call them residents.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so the residents get to come and their families, and
Yeah.
that we get an opportunity to just love on families
Yeah.
and love on people and build relationships. So thank you for giving us that chance to
It
do
was-
that, because that's so exciting
Yeah,
for us
it's
as a
amazing.
church.
Yeah,
to
it
be
was the
able to
Lord,
do.
but I was just kind of the vessel he used. But
Yeah. Yeah, so thank you for that work. Thank
Yeah.
you for the work that you've obviously done in the past and what you're doing now with the transition home. And we'll be continue to pray, and,
Yeah.
and hopefully through this podcast and getting things out there, we can continue to get more awareness, out there of what can all be done. Because, I mean, if you look at it, it could be limitless.
let me just I just want to put one plug in there, because something I forgot to bring up. I've been involved with a lot of different judicial systems, both on the other side of the wall and on this side. But I think the judicial system we have here, from the judges to the sheriff, are really very caring people who don't really want to send people to prison. They
Yeah.
want to see them get healthy and well.
Right.
That, to me, is a huge plus.
Yeah.
Huge plus.
Good.
When you're not fighting the system. Our judges and our sheriff and the community corrections, they don't want to want
Right.
to separate people from their families. They don't want to send them to prison. Some people need to go to prison.
Sure.
But for the most part, there's a high percentage that they need help,
Right.
rather than going to prison.
Right.
And our judges see that.
Yeah.
So
That's exciting.
yeah, it is good.
Yeah, good.
That's good.
Well, Don, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for giving all of your wisdom, your story, your insight. We'll continue to pray that God continues to use you, and that we'll keep doing everything we can to help in whatever way we can. And
appreciate
hope you
it.
guys that are listening or watching, when this gets out there, share it, like it, comment. If you're out there and you have the means to be able to remove barriers, I think we just need to be a people that don't just hear but act. Like we need to be out there making a difference and coming alongside things that are making a difference. So
Absolutely.
thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
See ya.
Perfect.
Thank you for having me.